Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino, and we have a terrific guest here today. We have Weston Jenkins from Texas LandMen in Bernie, Texas. How's it going, Weston?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing just fine. I'm glad we could finally link up and get you on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk about some ranch real estate.
Yes, sir. So for those of us, who aren't too familiar with you, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, man. So Weston Jenkins, I just turned 25 years old. I'm from a real small town by the name of Medina, Texas. So I had about 500 people in my entire town. Didn't even have a stoplight throughout the city or the town, I guess you could say. Everybody I went to school with, we all lived on ranches. I grew up, in the outdoors, hunting, fishing. Every day after practice, my buddies and I would go fish the river that flowed through the entire town. So I've been in the outdoors my entire life. I come from a real estate background. My uncle's in real estate. He's actually my broker, and a bunch of my aunts and uncles were in real estate, whether it's commercial, residential, or farm and ranch. So I've been around the industry my entire life and always had a passion and a draw to it. Graduated college about a year ago from Texas State. I was a marketing and sales concentration major there, so I was on the sales team at Texas State. So that was a really good experience. Got to travel the country, got to compete against other D1 schools in sales competition. So I got to learn, how to unjustify the needs and, solve the needs, what they're looking for, and really just kind of dive into the people industry, which is what real estate's all about. So now I live down in Bernie, Texas, and I've been doing ranch real estate since this February, actually. So I haven't been doing it too long, but I absolutely love it.
Okay, very good. So for those of us, who are maybe watching from outside the state of Texas, or maybe just aren't familiar with Medina and Bernie, where are Medina and Bernie?
Yeah, so Bernie's about 15 minutes north of San Antonio. I guess you could say northwest of San Antonio. And then Medina is about an hour west of San Antonio.
Okay, very good. So, kind of the maybe some of the deals you're doing, are you mostly working the San Antonio area or working in Medina as well?
Yeah, man. So I'm pretty scattered. Wherever I can get some business is where I'm loading up and rolling out to. So I got some listings that are actually by Corpus Christi. I got 5 listings down there. I got a 301 acre tract, a 204 acre tract. I got a 154 acre tract, 183 acre tract down there, kind of by Corpus. They're in Beeville and Victoria. And I'm also working some properties that are, the Texas Hill Country, such as Harper and Mountain Home, Texas. So they're all real small towns, but I grew up in this town, so I can have the normality of the properties and kind of the understanding of it. At being only 25 years old, I can still get a pretty good feel for it because I grew up in that area my entire life. So, but pretty much wherever I can get some business is where I'm going. So I'm not really stuck on just one specific area.
Yeah, of course. There's definitely a lot to be said for, having someone who knows that neck of the woods, right?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, being a little familiar with the property definitely helps. Being able to talk to the people about it. A lot of people are interested in what the trees are, what can grow there, what kind of soil the property has. How to obtain the wildlife, how to keep the wildlife exemptions and the ag exemptions and stuff. It's just something that I was fortunate enough to be learning from a pretty young age.
Okay, very good. Could you kind of maybe elaborate more on what ag exemptions are and why they're important?
Yeah, so ag exemption is something that you can utilize on a property to help you lower your taxes, your property taxes. So you file what's called the 1D1, and it really helps lower the property taxes by bringing either cattle or sheep or horses on the property. And really does, all you got to help, you got to have, ample amount of food for them, cover, and you got to help either like erosion control or predator control. And so, a tax appraiser will come out there and make sure he'll just have a checkbox and make sure you're hitting all those checkpoints. And you'll get a tax benefit because you're helping out with the agricultural scene. So if you're doing what the government wants you to be doing, you're going to get some tax breaks on it. So at our office, we'll help people either obtain the ag exemption or, if a property that they're looking at buying already has an ag exemption, we'll help them keep that ag exemption and the qualifications that they have to keep utilizing to keep that ag exemption. So that's the cool thing about the ranch real estate industry is if you run it through a business like an LLC, what you're doing with the property can be utilized as tax write-offs as well. If you're going in there and you're helping fix the roads, if you're building a new dam, if you're building a pond, if you're going and fixing the fences, if you're buying feed, if you're running the ranch as a business, you can utilize all that as tax write-offs, which can really help you out in the long run when you have to file.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm just curious as well, like kind of when you're you're dealing with ranches where it's been, maybe in the family for a long time. Do those ranches, those exemptions, do they change frequently?
Not necessarily, no, but if you don't want to, do the ag exemption, which I haven't met a person that wants to yet, you are going to be, responsible for rollback taxes. And so it's usually like a really high necessity if the property does have an ag exemption to keep that ag exemption. But once the property's had it for so long, it's kind of just like handing over a playbook. You just keep doing what the person's been doing that's owned the property, and it's pretty well, organized to keep that ag exemption on the property.
Absolutely. Is it true that you can have bees as an ag exemption?
That is true. Yep. Yeah. You can have bees. You can have, I even have one property out in Comfort that I have a buyer client looking at, and there's a bunch of birdhouses on the property. And I asked the listing agent, I was like, what's up with the birdhouses? He's like, oh, that's how the guy has the ag exemption here. So it's even like little birdhouses, that counts as shelter for them, so it's pretty cool, man. I mean, there's a bunch of different animals that you can help out and you can get that ag exemption on the property. So yeah, bees, birds, like I said, pigs, horses, cows, cattle. See a lot of people do cattle exemptions on that for the ag. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so I'm assuming you need a certain amount of cattle, a certain number, or like accommodation for them.
Yeah, it's usually a certain amount, however big the property is. It's usually like 1 cow per 5 acres is usually about the amount you want without them de-rooting the entire property, because they'll eat you out of house and home if you're not careful. If you put too many head on, say you put 50 head on a 10-acre place, that place is going to be a desert pretty soon, so you just gotta be careful with not putting too many on there. But yeah, it's about 1 cattle per 5 acres.
Okay, fair enough. So what is it about, kind of working with farm and ranch that you particularly like?
Man, I really just like how every ranch is different. You can go into a ranch, it's almost like a house, and you can go in there and you can help people draw up like a vision for it. You can go in there and you can help them with the wildlife, and you can go in, you can help them building a new pond, or you can go in there and help them plant new trees, or you can go in there and it's like almost playing golf too. Every golf course is different. It's like every ranch is different, so every day is new. And I really like the clientele that I deal with and the customers that I'm with every day. Everybody has the same passion and everybody wants the same thing. And that's just having a property that they can go out and enjoy with their friends and family. So you're just connecting the dots with them and helping them get to their overall desired goal, which is to have a property they can come bring their friends and families out to, and hunt and raise food on, so I really like helping people get to that end goal as well, so it's almost like I'm not even working, it's just like a passion of mine that I'm helping people grow into.
That's awesome. It kind of seems like you're getting people from more of the urban areas wanting to have that rural lifestyle and kind of that sustainable living. I mean, do you see people, planting crops out there as well?
Yeah, it really depends upon what part of Texas you're going to, but we definitely have, I haven't dealt with anybody in specific that, is just like a straight farmer and cattle or farms the property, but there's definitely some agents in our office that, definitely help the farmers with that. So.
Sure, definitely. So what kind of common trends do most of your buyers have? Like, are there certain things that they want in a farm or a ranch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends if they're going to farm it or if they're just looking at for a hunting ranch, So if they're farming it, they're definitely going to want like a certain kind of soil. They're definitely going to want to have, ample amounts of water wells, even some pivots, which are the big machines you see on properties that, go over the property and irrigate it, So if they're going to farm it, they're going to want a good irrigation system, or if they're going to have to go in there and put it on there, it's going to cost a good amount of money, But with a hunting ranch, a lot of people want to see, good deer blinds, good feeders that are going to convey with the property. They're going to want to see like good, healthy genetics on the property already, or if they're going to come on there and put their own genetics on there. So you really just have to see, what exactly they're wanting with the property, so you kind of dive into what they're wanting on that first phone call, so you're not sending them properties that they're not going to have any interest in, so if they're going to be wanting to farm the property, what are you going to be wanting to farm? What kind of, how often do you want to water? How often do you want to go out there and pick it? Are you going to be doing cotton or corn or wheat or rye? So just really diving into their needs and what they're looking for. So, but everybody's different. Everybody wants something different, so it's really just coming up with the needs that they want and solidifying those,
Sure, absolutely. I'm just curious as well, like if someone, wants a water well, at what time in the when is that drilled?
So it's usually drilled, right after the contract closes. The water well can cost anywhere from about $15,000 to $25,000, depending upon how deep they have to go. But one of my clients right now, I have a listing. It's 105 acres right outside of San Antonio. It doesn't have a water well on it, but as a negotiation chip, he's like, I'll help, half of the cost of the water, digging the water well for the new owners, so that would probably happen, I would say, right after the ranch closes. But usually people won't be going in there and doing any work, during the option period, because it's still it's still in that time frame to where they can back out, or they don't have to necessarily close the contract, So once it's closed and funded is usually when people start going in and really fixing it up to how they want it to be.
Okay. So just to clarify as well, for maybe people who aren't familiar with, I guess, with ranching as well, once you drill that water well, is that strictly for the cows, or how else can you use that water?
No, you can use the water to, fill up a pond. You can run however many lines off of that water well that you want, So, you can run the lines into different pastures, or you can hook up the water well to your house, because most houses in rural areas don't have city water. They're off the radar pretty much. So you have to dig the water well and hook the house up to the water well, and then that water well can be utilized for, let's say you have water troughs throughout the property for your wildlife, which you have to have water for them if you want to keep that ag exemption up. So that water can be ran to those different troughs on the property. And so they always say, if a ranch doesn't have water, the ranch isn't going to last very long, So a ranch water is very, very valuable to have on a ranch, and the more, say you have live water on a property, it's really going to increase the property value by an extraordinary amount than a property that doesn't have live water. So it's a really key part of owning ranch and ranch ownership. It really makes everything thrive and the animals survive, and it keeps you, going as well. If you have a house on the property, you're going to have water.
Sure, absolutely. So also with, in terms of people using it maybe for selling hunts, do you have clients who do that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a bunch of people that are outfitters. So one of the properties I actually just sold was a 146 acre tract, and the guy had really good, they're called gladiator genetics. There's a bunch of different genetics within whitetail breeds, within whitetail that you can breed. So, that guy had gladiator genetics, so he would have people come out and hunt on the property. And that was one of the ways that he was producing income through an LLC, because if you're just filing an LLC to get tax benefits and you're not trying to produce any income on it, you're just doing write-offs, you can get in trouble with the IRS. So one of the ways that we do see people, come in and produce some income is by selling the hunts, or by leasing the property out to, let's say, cattle ranchers, and a cattle rancher will come out and pay the property owner a month basis fee, almost like rent, and he'll have his cattle on that guy's property running that. And then that guy's cattle can actually help the property owner utilize the ag exemption, so it really benefits both parties.
Sure. So that sort of lease, generally, how long would that lease be?
It really just depends, man. It can be on a month-to-month basis, or it can be, a signed written agreement that's a year, 2 years, 3 years. But, it does have the discrepancy to where the property owner can cancel it at any time, because they can sell it at any time. And that new owner, may not want that lease on there. So it's just something you can write up in the special provisions of the contract, to where you can say the lease, it's usually like a 60-day grace period after the option period. So option period usually 20 to 30 days, and it's usually like a, just a 60-day grace period. You have to give the leaseor, like, hey, I'm selling the property. You got 60 days to to find something else or find another property to go, so you're giving them a pretty big cushion to find another property, so you're not just throwing them out to the wolves.
Sure, absolutely. So kind of with, I mean, I know we just opened up with dove season. Do you find that a lot of people will want maybe fields, they'll plant sunflowers or something to attract doves?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's usually you got to be a little ahead of the game on that because sunflowers take some time to get producing the seeds that the doves like. But we definitely see people getting their properties ready probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months before hunting season, but we definitely see people going out and tilling the fields and planting sunflowers and to attract different animals and different breeds of birds for sure.
Sure. So aside from sunflowers, I mean, what else can you do to attract those animals?
You talking about dove or just?
Yeah, doves.
Yeah, I mean, they really like water in ponds too, so if you go around a pond, you can put some decoys around that pond. They really like that. They really like rye, and they really like sunflowers. And so that's pretty much what we hunt around is all sunflower fields or ponds. Those are like the two keys for dove to come in. For us, at least, it works for us. So.
Okay. Yeah, so for those of us who aren't familiar, I obviously know, but who aren't familiar with the different animals we have here in Central Texas, what sort of animals do people normally hunt?
Yeah, so I'll definitely say whitetail. I'll definitely say, in regards to like exotics, there's a bunch of axis, there's black buck, there's all dead, and in some ranches they even have African exotics like Buck, you know. There's just a bunch of different animals that you can put on the property, but I would say probably the most popular is definitely whitetail and axis bucks. Probably axis are a lot better eaten. For those of you that don't know, they're the deer with the spots, and they have the 3-point horns on them. They're really beautiful. They're actually originated from Asia, and they came over here. I think it was like 8 million years ago. I read in a book that I was reading, but a long, long time ago they came over here. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, how about that? And what other, what other animals do you think that maybe our guests would be on a property that you wouldn't hunt generally?
That you wouldn't hunt?
Yep.
Well, I'd say just about anything other than what you're raising. I mean, some people do have like their whitetail on the property that they just like to go out and look at that they're raising, or that they're breeding. So a bunch of guys that I've been on some ranches that just have like a big breeding operation with deer, and that's like a pretty big industry down here in Central Texas. So they'll have their breeding pens and their AI genetics that they're fertilizing these doe, and you're not gonna want to go and harvest these deer that you're trying to raise. So they'll have a bunch of pen raised deer, they'll have a bunch of pen raised axis bucks, or they'll have a bunch of exotics that they're selling. So there's a pretty big exotic game business down here in Texas too, where a bunch of people are selling these exotics to big game ranches. So they'll go on and trap these exotics from other places, and then they'll go and sell them, kind of like a wholesaler, but for animals. And with exotics, it's legal, but whitetail, you can't go out and sell those whitetail like that. You have to have a special license to do it. So we see a bunch of people down here raising whitetail deer. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. So I'm just kind of interested in that operation. I mean, do you need biologists? How do you kind of calculate and make sure everything's lined up?
Yeah, a lot of the people do have biologists that will just come out and check on the property, once or twice a week. But some of these guys, man, they've been doing it their whole life, and they're just rocking and rolling with it. But you do have to have some special licenses to do it and to breed it. We go to a bunch of like deer association shows called the Texas Deer Association, or the Whitetail, or the Texas Trophy Hunters, and they have a bunch of guys that are exhibitors that come up and just talk about their breeding operation, trying to sell their deer to big game ranches, so it's a pretty big operation. But yeah, some of the guys, they do have like on staff biologists, and then some guys just have like a contractor biologist that will just come out and check on the property, make sure everything's running smooth and running the right way and ethically. So.
Okay, very good. Do you ever get, birds coming in from Canada as well, like geese or anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely see some geese, and I'm not too big of like a waterfowl hunter. But there is a bunch of waterfowl that can come in. I know a bunch of my buddies are like redhead hunters and mallard hunters and drake hunters. But that's something a little out of my expertise. I'm not too big into waterfowl, more of like a dove hunter and then a whitetail guy.
Okay, fair enough. So what are you, I know you kind of mentioned how you had a few in Corpus Christi,
Yeah.
area, Beeville, Victoria, as well as Central Texas. Can you kind of explain, what those properties look like, maybe what the property owners are looking for?
Yeah, man. So we'll start with the three in Beeville. The three in Beeville, one of them's a 400-acre tract, and if you look from like a sky or a bird's eye view, it's going to look like a perfect square. And it's a high fence property. And as you go into the property, it's going to have a bunch of senderas cut out of it. And with those senderas, you're going to find a bunch of deer blinds, and you're going to find a bunch of feeders. And there's also like a big cattle pen on that property as well, because the owner was running cattle on it. And so he was really, really utilizing that property to hunt with his family. And then he was using it to just raise the cattle on, so that property, it doesn't have any improvements, but it does have water and electricity. It has a nice little pond on it too. And then I have another 181 acre place down in Beeville that I have listed. That's it's actually just a strictly remote cattle ranch. So it's got about a 12,000 square foot barn on it. It's got a bunch of cattle chutes and corrals inside of that barn. And the property's split up into 7 different pastures. And so it's got 2 pastures on, or 4 pastures on each side, and then it's got like sub pastures cut within it. It's a pretty cool little piece of property. It can be utilized for, you could even bring some windmills on there if you wanted to come and get some royalties from the big wind energy companies. There's a company called Real Estate X that if you go on there and you look at what they're doing, you can get like a bunch of mineral leases from them, and they'll, it's like mineral brokers pretty much. So if you go on Real Estate X, you type in your property, what you're wanting to do, there'll be some people that might be interested in your property coming out and setting up windmills or oil wells or solar panels, and you can get royalties and produce some income off it like that. And so that property is really good because it's super flat, no mountains, no hills. It's just raw farmland, besides the barn improvement. So it's a really cool property, and I'm targeting a bunch of cattle farmers on that ranch. And so whenever I'm trying to sell a property, I think of, what would be the perfect customer? What's the key customer for this guy? Like, who do I want to go after? Because you don't want to be wasting your marketing dollars on people that aren't even cattle ranchers, so I'm automatically blocking out the hunters because they're not going to want a piece of property that they can't hunt on, so now I'm going after the cattle ranchers. So I'm looking up all the cattle, organizations, associations, looking up the shows that they have, looking up all the people that would be involved with that, like through Facebook or through Facebook target ad marketing. So it's pretty crazy how in like depth you can get with your targeting on social medias and ads like that. But the other property I have is 183 acres in Beeville. It's got a little 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath hunting cabin on it, and it's just set up for hunting. It's got a real nice pasture. It's got a pond on it. And then I got 3 in Victoria. One's 300 acres, another one's 204 acres, and then another one's 154 acres. I had 2 showings Thursday, actually for that cattle ranch, and then I had it for that 154 acre tract. So I'm hoping we can get those offers in because the people that I went and showed them to are really interested in them. So fingers crossed on that. But that 204 acre tract has about 2,500 linear feet of highway frontage. And so it's about 7 miles outside of town, right outside the ETJ. And so the city water doesn't run to it, but with that amount of highway frontage, what I'm looking for is I'm like, all right, this is a really good development piece of property, so I'm looking at a bunch of the home builders in the area, a bunch of the developers in the area. I'm calling a bunch of those guys, the custom home builders. I'm like, hey, I got this piece of property. This is where it's at. Send them the listing. Would you have any interest in coming to see it? Do you think this could be a value of what you have going already in the area? Because Victoria has about 65,000 people in it, and it's really like an oil-based city. But as oil starts to come back, I think that property is going to get more and more valuable, So, and with that amount of highway frontage, it's commercial priced, but I think it can definitely be worthwhile for the investor to come in and develop it. Or you can even build like a big Texas Best gas station or possibly Buc-ee's, because I did some research, and a lot of people run out of gas on that Highway 77. It's like a main highway going into Victoria, and there's not a gas station within like 25, 30 miles coming into Victoria from Hallettsville. So it could be a real good real good gas station location, you know. And then I put two under contract, and one of them closes this coming week, actually on Wednesday. And that was the one I was telling you about with all the Gladiator genetics on it. So I sold that one. That one actually had two houses on it, 200 and 2,200 square foot, and then 1,700 square foot, and then also had a hunter's cabin. So, you know, I thought it could be like a real good company retreat or a corporate retreat ranch. You know, it's got real good genetics. It could sleep about 30 people on the property. But actually, a lady, she just came in and purchased it because she wanted it to be utilized for her entire family. You know, she got a big family, so it ended up working out well. And then the first property I actually sold in my career was a 320 acre tract out in Mountain Home. And so that it's actually pretty cool because the nonprofit that I have, Disabled Outdoorsmen USA, the two kids that were the owner's son of that property that I was working for actually had the same disability as my cousin TJ that I started the nonprofit after. And so all the wheelchair blind, all the hunting blinds were wheelchair accessible. The hunting lodge was wheelchair accessible. It had everything was, you know, wheelchair accessible. So I was already really familiar with the ranch and how it could accommodate people with different disabilities, you know. So that was definitely something I touched on when I was showing it. So actually the first guy that came and saw it ended up buying it. So it actually worked out really, really well.
Sure, absolutely. That's terrific. Could you kind of expand a bit more on, I guess you kind of talked about oil, you talked about the market, you talked about windmills. Could you kind of talk about the maybe the distinction between land use or like land rights and mineral rights?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, there's three rights that come involved with it. You know, you got your surface rights, your subsurface rights. And so really what it comes down to is with like the mineral rights. I memean, a lot of people are like, this property come with mineral rights, you know, and you can own a percentage of the mineral rights. And usually what that is the subsurface mineral rights, you know, but what isn't included in the mineral rights, which I'm working with a guy right now, is like the gravel and the sand that's above the oil that's deeper in the ground. You know, so there's still a bunch of research that I have to do, you know, because I've only been in the industry for 6.5 months. And that's like a really, really deep, and, you know, there's people that are just specifically, I mean, there's lawyers that's all they focus on, you know, so I'm still learning that trait, but, you know, it's something that is really important when it comes to a property, because some people want to have the oil rights. And then it comes to like the executive rights. Like, do you have the rights to, if somebody just wants to come in the property at any time and start, you know, building a well, you got to read the title commitments and you got to see what oil leases are on there, well leases are on there. So it's a pretty lengthy process. Like one of the guys that I'm working with that property in Somerset, he's got 5 oil wells on that property and he owns 22%. And I was like, what are the royalties on that? And he's like, well, it really just depends. You know, it's all based on economics of the oil and what it's going for per barrel. You know, he's like, sometimes I'm making $3,000, $3,500 a month. And then other times, like right now, I'm making $200 a month. You know, so it really just depends and it fluctuates and it goes with the market. And so the ranch real estate is kind of economically based, which is, you know, good and bad, you know, but it's definitely like a chip that I'm using on that property as like a negotiation chip of like, hey, this property has, you know, oil royalties, you know, it can help you with your property taxes. It can help with X, Y, and Z. You know, this is where the oil wells are. So you really have to go and find out. You almost got to know much about the ranch as the owner does or more, you know, so you really got to read the title commitments. You got to call the title companies, because you don't want to sell a property and 3 months later some guy come in with oil company and be like, hey, we have the rights to this property, come and dig a well right where you're going to build your house, you know, and you just got a lawsuit on your hands, you know. So it's definitely something you want to do a bunch of research on, and it's something that I'm, you know, learning every day. But we have a pretty good lawyer that helps us with all that stuff, and he walks me through it, you know. So it's definitely something you're going to want to keep an eye on. It's very important when it comes to ranch real estate.
Sure. So I'm just curious, that lawyer, is he a real estate lawyer or he works with the oil and gas?
Oil and gas. Yeah, I actually met him playing golf with one of my buddy's dads. He's like a head surgeon at a hospital in Kerrville, and he was there, and he's like an oil and gas attorney. You know, so he was like, hey, man, any title commitments you got? Him and I became pretty good buddies just on the golf course. He's like, any title commitments you got, man, just shoot them my way. You know, just get me lunch every now and then. We'll call it even. You know, so him and I go get lunch like every other week. And I don't send him too much stuff, you know, because I don't have much many offers going in right now, but if we have an offer going in, I'll definitely have him go over the title commitment during the option period. So he's done 2 for me so far, which is those 2 that I've sold.
Okay, very good. Could you also talk a bit about what a title commitment is in this context and why it's important?
Yeah, so the title commitment really just it's like I guess you could call it like the Bible of the property. It really just divulges into the ranch and everything that's been built on the ranch, all the easements that are on the property, all the mineral rights, all the executive rights. It really goes into the history of the property. I've pulled title commitment that have been 90 pages on a ranch that are from 1924 that I've had to get like a little magnifying glass to print it off and read it. It's been so small, but that was like an old gas line easement that ran through the middle of the property that we went in there and we had to see if they were still pumping oil and gas through it, and so I had to go in and read it, and it said that they stopped. That lease was going to stop in like 2014, so now we understood that we could go in there and talk to the owner or the new guy that was going to purchase it, because he was worried about that gas line easement that was running through the property and seeing if they were going to be able to come in there and still pump oil and gas through it, because he didn't know, but that was something that we were able to help him justify by reading that title commitment. But it really takes time, and it's really precise, and you almost just have to take breaks at it, because some of the lettering or the words are so small that almost hurts your eyes if you don't have like a little magnifying glass. But it's really just like a brief history, or not a brief history. It's like the entire history of the ranch, and it really just goes into it. So it's definitely something good to understand and know. Like one of the properties that I have in Victoria, the 154 acre tract, if you look on the map, on the topo map, you can see where it almost looks like there used to be like an old pipeline, but I was all over the property. Usually if there's like a pipeline, they have like some signs, or they have like a gas line easement, or like some kind of sign on the gate, or they have like some poles sticking out of the ground, but there's nothing. But if you look from like a bird's eye view, it's like a perfect line that goes through it. Or if you look on Google Earth, you can see it like starts even before the property and goes through it. But I was reading the title commitment and I didn't see anything about it. So I don't know if they just went in there and they were going to clear it, but it's something that I'm still doing some research on. But it definitely takes time to understand those, and I'm still working towards that, but it's just a real deep dive into the ranch and everything that comes with it and it's on it. So it's
Sure, absolutely. And I know you touched on it, a little bit earlier, but could you kind of expand on what royalties are?
Yeah, so royalties are, anything, if there's like a gas line easement, you're getting a percentage. So you're pretty much, it's like the oil company paying you a percentage for letting them utilize your property to extract that oil out. So it's almost like them paying you rent for coming out to the property and extracting that oil. And it can either be, a justified amount, or it can fluctuate with the amount that they're pumping out. Like the owner that I'm working with, my client, he gets a percentage of whatever the barrel's worth. And that's what he does. But you can also go in there and put like a windmill on a property, and you can get royalties every month. That's like a justified amount, every month. And then there's another property that we're working on. It's a 1,000 acre tract in Victoria, and it has a big cell tower on it. It's a communication lease, and they're paying the current owner $800 a month to utilize his property. So it can really be, utilized in a bunch of different ways. But that Real Estate X that I was telling you about, it's a really good platform to where if you're interested in something like that, you can hop on there and you can see, if you want to do oil and gas lease, or you want to do solar panel, or you want to do communication cell tower lease, it really gives you a bunch of different options. But yeah, it's pretty much just like them paying you rent for letting them utilize your property. Is pretty much what a royalty is on there.
Sure. So I know you ran through it a little bit, but that platform you were talking about, does it just strictly tell you, what you can do with the land, or what does it tell you?
Yeah, it connects you with people that primarily focus on, renewable energy or oil and gas leases. And so it's like they're like brokers for the oil and gas, or for the windmills, or for the solar panels. And so you'll send them the property you have, and they'll see if it's a good fit for what they're doing, and they'll come out and do like an analysis on it and see if it's something that they want to end up, pursuing. I actually heard about them on the Bigger Pockets podcast. I'm like a pretty big fan of that, with like Brandon Turner and David Green, all those guys. I'm a pretty avid listener on there. And so I heard about it on there, and so I checked it out. Now I'm like telling my clients about it. Check this out. It's something you want to do, or telling the people that I'm trying to sell my client's property to, like, hey, this is also an option you can do. If you want to try to lessen the cost and bring some windmills on here, these are the amount of royalties that they'd be willing to pay between. So I can connect you with the guys. Just trying to be their every point of contact to get the deal done.
Absolutely. It seems like those are, at least on the Gulf Coast, South Texas, at least, those windmills are popping up everywhere.
Yeah, they really are, man. They really are. Yeah, those properties that I have down by the coast a lot of them would be perfect for those windmills, so it's definitely something I'm still trying to learn about, but they're definitely everywhere down there.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm just curious as well. I know you mentioned earlier about, there being different pastures in a ranch. How do you know when to, what's the incentive for making smaller or larger pastures, or just pastures in general?
Yeah, so a pasture can really, if you have a property that's just thick brush all the time, and you only have like a Sendera cut, that's the only way that you can really drive through the ranch, but with a pasture, you can go in there and you can either utilize it for, let's say, a feed plot, or you can go in there and you can hunt it, or you can build a home site on it. So there's a bunch of different things, but really going there and tilling a property brings life to the ranch. So if you go in there and you're changing the overall characteristics of the property, you can make it even look cleaner. So we see a bunch of people that will go into a property and be like, yeah, we need to clean it up a little bit because it's just overgrown as heck. So going in there, clearing it out, paving it out, and giving the ranch just some characteristics, it can really make for like either a nice home site, or you can build a home site, let's say, above the level ground of the pasture, and you can have a nice little pasture that you're overlooking. So it's definitely something that we see a lot of people do.
Okay.
It's almost just like little Lincoln logs.
And where are most of those most of those companies coming from? They do those barndominiums.
Oh man, they're popping up everywhere. We got one group of guys that we work with. They're called the All Out Ranch Improvements. So there's a bunch of ranch improvement companies. There's a bunch of people that will come in and help you, utilize the ranch to its highest and best use. And one of the companies is All Out Ranch Improvement. So there's a bunch of different companies that can come up and build those barndominiums, or any really custom home builder can build them too.
Okay, I'm just assuming how that would look. Would they just take a survey and start drawing lines and saying, hey, a road should be here, or how would that look?
Yeah, they'll come in there and see how the property's laid out, where the best, like you were saying, where the highest and best use for the barndominium will be. They'll survey it out. They'll come and stake it out. Some of the companies have their own, contractors that will come in and lay the concrete down. So it's a pretty fairly quick process with the barndominiums. You can pop them up pretty quick. It's not like a customized home that you're having to come in, and that barndominium can be built, I would say, within 2 to 3 months, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Weston, is there anything anything you're looking forward to in the future with farm and ranch land?
Yeah, man, I would really say that one of the things that I'm looking forward to be, I want to be a top 10 ranch real estate agent in the state of Texas within 5 years is like one of my high priority goals. And I'm really looking forward to getting my own ranch one day, and going in there and customizing it to my liking, and hopefully flipping it down the line, because ranch real estate's just like flipping houses. You can go into a old beat up piece of property and you can make it look more appealing. You can add some stuff to it, add improvements, and you can flip it almost like flipping houses. So I want to get a couple ranch flips under my belt. I want to get my own ranch going, and just get my career really skyrocketing here in the next, I'd say, year and a half. I really want to start moving some property. So
Yes, sir. That's what I like to hear. Well, Weston, is there anything that you haven't said that you'd really just like to hammer home?
And as of right now, I think I'm good. If y'all are ever looking to buy or sell, or looking to, want to get an overall value of your property, I can definitely help you out and get you some sold comps in the area. We got real good connections with appraisers and different creditors, Capital Farm Credit, Texas Farm Credit, a bunch of those guys. So any questions you have, don't hesitate to reach out to me or call me or email me. I'm here for you. So.
Yes, sir. All right. So, maybe someone's watching, they're interested in buying some farm and ranch land. They